Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. This is the post-fight review for the Otto Wallin vs Dominic Breazeale fight on the Adrian Broner card, which was on Showtime. This was, as it turned out to be from my prediction, a one-way fight for the most part. Otto Wallin boxing to a decision, pecking apart Dominic Breazeale, comfortable on the scorecards, 116, 112, 117, 111, and 118, 110. And I think those three scorecards that the refs turned in, yeah, I can live with those. I was thinking the range could be anything from 116, 112 to 118, 110 because there were a couple of tight rounds. But apart from that, it was mostly one-way traffic. He used his superior boxing skills, his movement. He had superior hand speed, superior foot speed, punch technique, also stamina too. At least in the first half of the fight, it was all one-way traffic. And after 7 rounds, I think I had it 6-1 to Otto Wallin. But the second half of the fight, it did sort of change into something a little bit different, but I'll come to that in a moment. But really, in this fight, we saw good boxing skills by Otto Wallin, as I expected. It always shocked me, and I said in my preview, and I'd said on Twitter quite loudly, I don't know why people are expecting that this was going to be a slugfest. Even the commentator, after 4 or 5 rounds, said that he was surprised that it wasn't a slugfest and that it was all one-way traffic. But if anyone who had seen Wallin fight ahead of the Tyson Fury fight, because I think most people are basing what they know about Otto Wallin solely on the Tyson Fury fight, where it was a bit rough and rugged, but that was because of the cut to Fury. Fury made it into more of an inside fight. But Otto Wallin was always going to go back to his wheelhouse for this fight, and he was trying to stay out of the way. And after about 6 or 7 rounds, Dominic Breazeale had been pretty much beaten up. His right side of his face was swelling up. He was throwing arm punches. He was missing horrifically, off balance at times. And it sort of looked like it was maybe going towards Otto Wallin breaking him down and stopping him later in the fight. But it didn't eventuate that way, despite, the accuracy from Otto Wallin, who landed something like, I'll just go to my notes here. So they said on the post-fight that it was 232 of 659 punches, and Dominic Breazeale 91 of 556. And that followed what we were seeing for the most part. The eye test, it looked like Otto Wallin was outworking him, that he was picking him apart, that he was more accurate, and so the punch stats followed. But later in the fight, there were some concerning moments, not so much because I ever thought Otto Wallin was really in trouble, but again, like the Fury fight, he tied later on in the fight. After about round 8 or so, Wallin was noticeably slowing down, but the problem was Dominic Breazeale was pretty much gassed from about the 5th or 6th round, and he was really not able to take advantage as he might have liked. He did have some better moments in the latter half of the fight. I thought that he finished quite strong, but it was too little too late. And there were some rounds, rounds 8, 9, 10, that sort of stuff, where he was landing a few more shots, and there was one notable uppercut that he landed, very eye-catching. But, by this stage, he was pretty spent, didn't have a lot on his punches, and Otto Wallin just, tried to, I don't want to say survive, but he stayed out of trouble in the last couple of rounds. He wasn't trying to sort of do anything too expansive, especially in the final round, and ultimately, he got through it. He got the decision. It was a 12-round fight, which I was surprised because it had been listed as a 10-rounder before. But so if it's a 12-round fight, maybe there was something on the line, but I just didn't catch what it was. Perhaps it was an eliminator of some sort or a regional title. Who knows? I'll try to follow up on that and report on that after this one. But yeah, it certainly did have a pattern where Otto Wallin dominated, pretty much the first 7 rounds, and then it became a bit more even later on, although Otto Wallin was never in any real trouble. And I was saying ahead of this fight that I thought Dominic Breazeale was shop-worn, that he'd seen better days, that he's been in too many wars, and I was a little surprised how many people were actually picking him to win this fight and win it by KO. Some people thought that Otto Wallin didn't have any skills and that this was going to be easy work for Dominic Breazeale. I never saw that at all. If you saw the pre-fight video that I did, the preview, I thought that Otto Wallin was going to do exactly what he did. And yeah, this is just how he fights. So this to me always shaped as a good style matchup for Otto Wallin. A big, slow, lumbering guy like Dominic Breazeale was always going to get picked apart by the guy with good hand and foot speed, accuracy, and the fact that he was southpaw was also a disadvantage for Dominic Breazeale. Just didn't really seem to know how to crack the code on that one. There were a few times where I thought Otto Wallin is riding his luck a little bit, sort of fighting off the ropes, but by that stage, Dominic Breazeale didn't seem to have too much on his punches, and I did think that Wallin was fading, but he was able to get away with it in this one. But I want to put something in perspective here, because he beats Dominic Breazeale, beats him conclusively, 8-4 at the worst, and at the best 10-2 according to one judge. Dominic Breazeale, as I said previously, he's been in a lot of wars. He's not as good as he once was. He's had a lot taken out of him from some very, very tough fights over the years. We're talking about going back 7-8 years. He was in a lot of ding-dong battles. That's just the way he fights. And I've said he's got diminishing returns in recent fights, recent years, hasn't looked as good. And this is why I was picking Otto Wallin so confidently, because I didn't really have any faith in Dominic Breazeale anymore. And there were a few shots where it did look like it sort of rattled him quite a bit, not to the point where he was dropped, but certainly he was feeling Otto Wallin's straight lefts in particular. And Wallin is not a massive puncher, but he was able to hold his feet at times and throw those straight lefts with confidence, knowing that he was going to get out of the way because Dominic Breazeale was just too slow. But putting this in perspective, this does not make Otto Wallin a top 10 fighter, probably not even a top 20 fighter. So far, the best win of his career before this was against Adrian Granat, his countryman. He beats Dominic Breazeale, a fading Dominic Breazeale, shop-worn, a bit of a husk Dominic Breazeale. I'm not surprised that it happened, so I'm not going to overrate the win. He looked good in the performance for the most part. There is some concerns, I guess, about the gas tank. He's sort of faded late in this fight. He faded late in the Fury fight as well. But I think, maybe as high as I could put him is like top 25. Somewhere there or thereabouts. Breazeale, realistically, at this point, is somewhere between top 30 and top 40, or even maybe top 50. I didn't rate Breazeale that highly, so I can't, go all in and, praise Otto Wallin to the hilt. But he did what he had to do, and he did, especially in the first sort of 7 or rounds or so, did it in style. And you sort of got the feeling, maybe this could go to a stoppage, but ultimately he tied too. And it is a decision win. So a good win, and he needed this for his career, because it's been all smoke and mirrors since the Fury fight, talking up how good he is, but not fighting anyone of note. But now you can actually go, well, Dominic Breazeale, he's a former 2-time title challenger, he's a name of sorts, sure, he's on the decline, and he most certainly is on the decline. Don't believe that he's not. He's been on the decline for years. Even at the point that he fought Deontay Wilder, he was on the decline. He's probably been on the decline since about 2014. Some of these wars that he's had have really taken the stuffing out of him. But good win for Wallin. Dominic Breazeale, possibly, his path is either two things: retirement, or he's just a gatekeeper level guy now. We could see him fighting, some guys on the way up. I could see, a younger prospect coming through the PBC ranks. He could fight them. Or maybe it's a crossroads fight with a Gerald Washington, something like that. Washington coming off a loss last year. Breazeale, Washington, that could make some sense. Breazeale, Areola. I don't think Breazeale Ortiz would make sense. I think Breazeale would probably get sparked in that one too. And for Otto Wallin, hopefully just onward and upward. They need to get him a higher sort of ranked guy, someone who's still got some juice, left in the orange. Breazeale's pretty much tapped out now. But Breazeale, he can certainly still earn some money in the heavyweight division if he wants to take a bit more punishment. And for Wallin, he sort of, gave himself a bit more added credibility. He's not just living off the whole sort of, I fought Tyson Fury once, I gave a good account of myself, but I still lost. He actually beat this guy and beat him up, at least in the first half of the fight, and looked good doing so. What'd you make of the fight? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.